Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Entering a realm between the hidden and forgotten, a slipstream caught between realities, a secret museum of the esoteric, the private library of shadows, all taking place in a world forged from mystery and caught between logic and myth. You are entering Parareality.
Hello and welcome to Parareality, where the veil between truth and conspiracy is pulled back and the unknown stares right back at us. I'm your host, Sandman, and tonight we're diving deep into one of the darkest and most guarded rabbit holes in modern history. The name Jeffrey Epstein has become synonymous with wealth, power, and unfathomable evil. His death in a New York City jail in 2019 didn't close the chapter on his crimes. It ignited a firestorm of speculation, outrage, and fear. And now, years later, new revelations continue to trickle out from civil lawsuits, ongoing investigations, and recent attempts to unseal documents, keeping this dark saga very much alive in the public consciousness. Because Epstein wasn't just a billionaire predator. He was connected, intimately connected, to the highest echelons of global power. Politicians, celebrities, royalty, tech moguls, and possibly even intelligence agencies. But the question that haunts us is, it's not just about what Epstein did. It's about who he did it with. And more importantly, who is working overtime to make sure the truth never sees the light of day. So tonight I ask the question, what's in the Epstein Files? These elusive court documents, rumored surveillance tapes, FBI evidence log, and confidential records that hold the potential to shatter reputations and expose a hidden web of depravity. Why are they still being kept from us despite the public outcry for transparency? Who is benefiting from their suppression? And are some of the people running our government implicated in these crimes? Could the President of the United States be involved? Could Trump? Could Biden? Could both? What if everything we thought we knew about the elite was just the surface, a carefully crafted distraction to keep us from noticing the rot underneath? Now, traditionally on this podcast, I have strayed away from talking a lot about politics and a lot about religion. However, in this particular case, you cannot talk about Jeffrey Epstein and bring in some part of a political aspect to it. Now, before I go into anything with this, I want to make it perfectly clear. I have no political agenda here. I am not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I don't lean to the left or lean to the right. I'm pretty much in the middle, which makes me an anomaly in this day and age. But I have no political statement to make here, and I'm not trying to advocate for one party's point of view versus the other. I'm just here to present the facts to you and ask these questions. So do not try to turn this into some sort of political themed podcast, because it is not. And with that being said, I want you to buckle in, because on this episode, we're going to dive deep into one of the most disturbing and consequential conspiracies of our time. But to learn more, you'll have to tune in, and find out. And of course, it's time for fan mail. If I had an echo, it'd be going echo. Fan mail. Okay. So normally at this point in time, I would welcome some new listeners. However, I got a message from user No1RT6PW. That's No1RT6PW, about the Third Man Syndrome episode that I did a couple of weeks ago. And he writes, ever heard about Special Forces experience? It could be specific people where I'd question their spiritual demeanors. Are they innocent types, benevolent types, or just average Joes? Well, during my research on this episode, I didn't run across anything like that as far as special forces or anything like that, but it doesn't mean that they don't exist. That's a good question, one I'll have to do a little bit more investigating into further. My opinion is that most are average, everyday people. I don't know about people being more, benevolent or innocent, or anything about necessarily their spiritual demeanors. It's just for the research that I found in this show, in that episode, it was just mostly, in my opinion, average, everyday, ordinary people. I didn't see anything about anyone being hyper-religious or on the opposite spectrum where they are completely atheistic or even agnostic. I didn't see anything like that. But that is a good question, and thanks for asking me that, No1RT6PW. I always enjoy getting messages from people who listen to the podcast. So if you've got a question or a comment, send it via email, sandman@parareality.com. That's sandman@parareality.com. Or you can post it to one of my social media accounts. I've got somewhere around 3,000 followers. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're not a regular follower, please be sure to do so. I think you'll find that this podcast differs from others like it by offering, a different point of view from the norm as what's typically offered in these alternative topic podcasts, as I call it. I just simply, as the host, present the evidence to you, and I let you, the listener, make up your own mind. And I encourage you to do your own research and come up with your own conclusions, such as what's going to happen here later on tonight. Now, if you don't follow me on the socials, you need to do that too, because it's where you can keep up with all the latest goings on with Para-Reality, as well as get a teensy-weensy glimpse into my personal life. I post all kinds of stuff on there that's some of it's podcast related, of course, and some of it is a little bit of glimpse into what's going on behind the scenes. I've got a YouTube channel where I'm trying to do some random videos here that I call behind the scenes videos that you can see what goes into making a podcast here. My studio set up, some little things that I do, some adventures that I go on. I just started it. I've only got a couple of episodes up. I plan on getting some stuff for the studio posted on there soon. I'll be giving you all the deets on how you can follow me on all my social medias, to include YouTube later on in the podcast, so make sure that you stay tuned for all that. And of course, as always, I gotta tell you about the big news. I'm going to be making my debut appearance at the Tennessee Wildman Encrypted Con this August, and I couldn't be more excited to see you guys there. I kind of got a little special surprise cooking for those of you who have been long-time listeners of the show. So I'll be announcing that a little bit later on via my social media accounts, which you're going to have to follow. So make sure that you mark your calendars, gang. It's Saturday, August the 16th, right around the corner. It's going to be at the Milner Recreation Center in McMinnville, Tennessee. This is a full day packed with guest speakers, experiencers, and experts covering everything from Bigfoot to Dogman, UFOs, and more. If it's strange, unexplained, or lurking in the woods, you'll hear about it there. And that's not all. There's a massive vendor hall featuring all the cryptid theme merch you could ever want. Plus, there's a bunch of local food trucks that'll be there to keep you fueled up while you explore and listen to all of these lectures that are going on. And of course, I'm going to be there with the Parareality Podcast at my booth. I'll have all my gear, and I'm ready to meet you, my listeners, face to face. So if you've ever had some sort of unusual, mysterious, or just downright creepy experience, come find me and share your story, and it might just wind up being featured on the podcast. Some very similar, matter of fact, exactly the same format that I used at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Festival. So if you want to know what it's going to sound like, listen to my episode that I did at the 2025 Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Festival, and I call it street interviews. So come hang out, talk weird with me, and be a part of the Parareality community in person. Now, for event details and tickets, there's still some stuff left. You can still get in if you want to go. Just visit Tennessee Wildman Encrypted Con Facebook page. They don't have a website. It's just on Facebook. That's the Tennessee Wildman Encrypted Con page on Facebook. Just search it up and go get your passes now. Remember, the date is Saturday, August the 16th. 2025. The location is in McMinnville, Tennessee at the Milner Recreation Table. Get your tickets and event details by going to the Facebook page of Tennessee Wildman Encrypted Con. Just look it up and you can find out all you need to know. So until then, stay curious, and I'll see you guys in the shadows.
Hi, I'm Cyndi Lauper. My scalp was covered with psoriasis, which could lead to psoriatic arthritis. But Cosentyx treats both.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis 300 milligram dose and adults with active psoriatic arthritis 150 milligram dose. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at Cosentyx.com or 1-844-COSENTYX.
Cosentyx works for me.
Ask your doctor about Cosentyx.
Parareality is a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network. For more information or to check out other shows on the network, please visit evergreenpodcast.com.
Broadcast from a secret bunker somewhere outside of Nashville, Tennessee. This is the award-winning podcast, Parareality.
All right, well, let's get right into it. Who was Jeffrey Epstein? To understand the magnitude of the conspiracy, we have to start with the man himself. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't born into power. He came from a modest Brooklyn background, a high school dropout who somehow managed to charm and scheme his way into elite circles. Well, how? How did he do this? Well, that's where things get interesting. He never graduated from college, yet he somehow landed a teaching position at the prestigious Dalton School in Manhattan. Now, this wasn't just any school. It was a grooming ground for the children of New York's wealthiest families. And the headmaster at that time? Well, Donald Barr, father of William Barr, who had gone to become Donald Trump's Attorney General. That's right, the same Attorney General who oversaw much of the Epstein case decades later. Coincidence? Well, maybe, maybe not. What exactly did Epstein teach at Dalton? Well, he taught math and science, reportedly, despite lacking formal qualifications to do this. This early access to the children of the elite and the immediate trust that he seemed to engender set a pattern. From Dalton, Epstein was recruited by investment banker Bear Stearns. He worked there just very briefly, but left under vague circumstances. Then he opened his own financial firm called J. Epstein and Company, and he claimed to manage the wealth of billionaires. Yet, right up to this very day, only one client is publicly known, and that's Leslie Wexner, the CEO of L Brands, which includes Victoria's Secret. Now, here's where it starts to get murky. Epstein's firm wasn't registered with the SEC. There's virtually no financial records to be found, no clients besides Wexner, and no clear evidence that he managed money at all. So what was he doing? The depth of Wexner's trust in Epstein was staggering. Wexner not only provided him with a lavish salary and housing, but famously granted Epstein full power of attorney over his entire financial empire. This meant Epstein could sign checks, manage investments, and essentially control Wexner's vast fortune. It was a level of access virtually unheard of for someone with Epstein's background. And it allowed him to operate with, well, pretty much unlimited resources. The highly unusual $200 million loan, as I use my air quotes, from Wexner that Epstein allegedly never repaid, it goes further into blurring these lines, suggesting that there was a relationship far deeper than just the client money manager one. Now, many people believe that Epstein was running a high-level blackmail operation here. He hosted powerful men in his homes in Manhattan, Palm Beach in New Mexico, and on his private island in the Caribbean, locations equipped with hidden surveillance cameras. Girls, many of them underage, were trafficked in and sexual acts were recorded. And those tapes, well, they weren't just for Epstein's pleasure. They were leverage. They were insurance. This wasn't just speculation. Survivors like Sarah Ransom explicitly testified to the existence of these tapes and the sophisticated surveillance systems in Epstein's properties. There are whispers that Epstein was an intelligence asset, and some claim that he was with Mossad. Others say it was the CIA or MI6. In fact, former U.S. Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta, who approved Epstein's 2008 plea deal allegedly said he was told to back off because Epstein, using my air quotes again, belonged to intelligence. This astonishing claim, reported by the Miami Herald, suggests that Epstein's activities weren't just merely criminal, but potentially sanctioned or utilized by powerful state actors for their own clandestine purposes. Epstein wasn't just a predator. He was a gatekeeper to a dark world, and one where sex, power, control, and corruption met in the shadows. And he didn't act alone in this either. He was the front man for a massive network, a global ring of powerful elites tied together by shared secrets, financial interest, and, it seems, unspeakable crimes. So now you have to enter Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of disgraced media baron Robert Maxwell, whose mysterious death in 1991, he fell off his yacht under strange circumstances, sparked its own set of conspiracy theories. But we're not here to talk about that. So many believe that, let's just get into it a little bit. Many believe that Robert was a Mossad agent. So did Ghislaine inherit his mission, or was she just simply a product of that clandestine world? Well, there are court documents that show and survivor testimonies that describe her as far more than just a socialite. She was an alleged enabler, a trusted lieutenant, actively involved in the recruitment, grooming, and trafficking of girls who were often teenagers for Epstein and his associates. She was the one who allegedly cultivated relationships with these vulnerable young women and drew them into Epstein's orbit, flying them to different properties, sometimes flying them out of the country, and trafficking them to high-profile individuals. The flight logs for Jeffrey Epstein's Lolita Express, they're real, and the names are staggering. And like I said, the Epstein's jet was infamously nicknamed the Lolita Express. Imagine that. Man, it carried not just politicians and royalty, but also prominent figures from academia, finance, and the arts. Now, this wasn't a small, isolated circle. This was a sprawling, interconnected web of people. Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's jet at least 26 times, though some reports suggest that the number could be much higher. He visited Epstein's private island, known as Little St. James, multiple times, even after Epstein's initial legal troubles became publicly known. And while Clinton's representatives, they claim his trips were related to humanitarian work, the sheer volume and destination raise profound questions as far as I'm concerned. Prince Andrew has been photographed with accuser Virginia Jeffrey, who claims he assaulted her when she was 17. The public pressure from these accusations eventually led him to settle a lawsuit with her for an undisclosed term and relinquish his royal duties and military titles. Now, Donald Trump once said Epstein, quote, likes beautiful women, many of them on the younger side. Now, I'll dive deeper into Trump's connection in all of this later. Even Bill Gates, despite Epstein's 2008 conviction, continued to meet with him as late as 2013, seeking advice on philanthropy, can't even say it. And that comes from Bill Gates' own mouth, his own admission. Now, this association, even years after Epstein was a registered sex offender, underscores the continued influence and access that Epstein maintained. Ehud Barak, former Israeli, and I hope I pronounced that right. I'm so sorry. You know how I am with names. He was a former Israeli prime minister, was even seen going in and out of Epstein's home in Manhattan. Alan Dershowitz is, famous attorney. He was named in several accusations by victims like Virginia Jeffrey, which, of course, he vehemently denies. And these are just the publicly known connections. And let's not forget the aforementioned Les Wexner, who essentially gave Epstein free reign over his fortune and even transferred the deed of a multi-million-dollar Manhattan townhome to him. Why? The question of Wexner's true knowledge and complicity, well, that remains a gaping hole in all of this story. So now I want you to ask yourself, why would some of the most powerful people on earth associate with a convicted sex offender? Either they were ignorant, which is, in my opinion, highly unlikely, given the public nature of Epstein's plea deal and his subsequent registration, as a sex offender, or they were complicit, or maybe compromised in some way. If this was a simple sex ring, it would have been shut down years ago, but this was something else. This was about control. Epstein allegedly lured the rich and powerful, tempted them with young girls, and recorded all of the debauchery that they engaged in. That gave him power, lots of power, and more importantly, gave someone else power over him. So the chilling implication is that these individuals weren't merely participants, but potentially victims of blackmail themselves, trapped in a web of their own making. So the Epstein Files, what's in them? Okay, let's talk about the files. The infamous, elusive Epstein Files. What are they? Where are they? And why are they being kept from the public view? Now, when we talk about the Epstein Files, we're talking about a combination of things here. We're talking about sealed court documents from various civil lawsuits. We're talking about FBI and DOJ investigative evidence from raids on his properties. We're talking about flight logs, and we're also talking about private communications. So those are all the things that consist of the Epstein Files, right? And when he was arrested in 2019, federal agents raided his townhouse, and they uncovered hard drives, CDs, photographs, and a veritable trove of digital and physical evidence. Some of these discs were explicitly labeled with names, dates, and descriptions. Chillingly likely evidence of encounters between underage girls and powerful men. They also found a safe behind a false wall, and inside that safe was cash, diamonds, foreign passports, and what appeared to be blackmail material, including what was described as a large stash of compromising photos. And if this was a simple case of illegal financial activity, this evidence would have gone public immediately, but yet it didn't, further fueling suspicions of a deliberate cover-up. Now, we've also seen a fraction of court records. In 2020, over 2,000 pages of documents were unsealed. They were primarily from the civil defamation lawsuit brought by Virginia Jeffrey against Ghislaine Maxwell. They included things like sworn depositions, graphic testimony from survivors detailing their abuse, and more names. But crucial information remained heavily redacted. Much of the most damaging content, including the identities of many John Does and Jane Does, is still sealed to this day by court order. Why is that? The official reason that's been given is to protect the privacy of the victims or individuals not accused of crimes. But you can argue that it also shields the powerful, allowing alleged co-conspirators to remain anonymous and avoid public scrutiny and or prosecution. And there's also the civil cases that have been filed in the U.S. Virgin Islands, where that's where Epstein kept his island, his private island, Little St. James. These lawsuits, notably against financial giants like J.P. Morgan Chase and Deutsche Bank, accused them of facilitating Epstein's crimes by ignoring blatant red flags and profiting from his illicit activities. In those filings, we learned that Epstein allegedly emailed, called, and bribed people in government and finance, suggesting a sophisticated network of influence and corruption. These filings revealed how Epstein used these banks to move money globally, often in large, suspicious transactions. J.P. Morgan Chase eventually settled with the U.S. Virgin Islands for $75 million. Now, you could say that's like an admission of significant wrongdoing by settling for that large of a settlement. But why haven't the full communications, the names within those email chains, and all of that stuff been released to us? Why? And then there are the persistent rumors of video evidence, hours of footage from inside Epstein's residences, where security cameras were supposedly placed in bedrooms and massage rooms. Survivors like Virginia Jeffrey have stated under oath that they actually saw cameras in these locations. So if it exists, this footage could prove beyond any doubt the scale and depravity of this operation that was going on. It would provide us with undeniable proof of who was involved and what transpired. So what's in the files? Well, you have names of politicians, tech executives, royalty, celebrities, and others whose involvement has yet to be fully exposed. We have dates that's in the Epstein files, dates of travel, dates of encounters, dates of transactions, dates detailing the timeline and frequency of these illicit activities. And of course, we have all kinds of evidence in the Epstein files. There's photographs, videos, emails, financial records, flight manifests, and detailed survivor testimonies. The existence of this evidence could explain why Epstein was protected for so long. It could also explain why so many powerful people are doing everything they can to suppress it, even to this day. Well, now it's time for me to try to pay a couple of bills, so I'm going to take a quick minute, and I want you to listen to this, and I'll be right back. Cliffhanger.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply.
Alrighty. Thank you for listening to that. Welcome back to the Parareality Podcast. We've been talking about the Jeffrey Epstein files. And right now we need to talk about the death of Jeffrey Epstein. Was it suicide or was he silenced? So this is, I guess, the most obvious and yet still unsolved part of the puzzle here, which is Jeffrey Epstein's demise. He was found dead on August the 10th, 2019, in his jail cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York. His death was ruled a suicide. But everything about the case screams cover-up. First, Epstein had allegedly attempted suicide weeks earlier, and he was placed on suicide watch. Then, for some weird reason, he was removed just days before his death, despite continued concerns by the authorities. And I use my air quotes again when I say authorities. This decision, reportedly made by a prison psychologist, remains highly questionable, especially given the clear protocol for high-risk inmates. Then he was placed in a cell alone, even though the protocol requires high-risk inmates to have a cellmate, precisely there to prevent self-harm or foul play. But yet, here he is in his own cell, despite after being on suicide watch. And then second, you have the security cameras that were monitoring Epstein's cell. Well, they mysteriously malfunctioned, both inside the cell and the hallway, both at the same time. Now, this isn't just a minor glitch here. This is a critical failure that directly enabled the circumstances of his death to remain unwitnessed and unrecorded. And third, you got the guards on duty, Tova Noel and Michael Thomas. They were supposed to check on Epstein every 30 minutes, and they apparently did not. They falsified records, and they later admitted to federal prosecutors that they were asleep for much of their shift and deliberately fabricated entries to make it appear as if they had performed their required checks. They eventually entered into a deferred prosecution agreement, and this essentially, it was them admitting their wrongdoing, but facing no jail time. Fourth, the autopsy of Jeffrey Epstein showed fractures in his hyoid bone, and that's a small bone in the neck, high up, and injuries. This type of injury is more commonly associated with strangulation than it is with hanging, which is what he supposedly did, hanged himself. Now, I think probably most people are familiar with Dr. Michael Baden. He is a very famous and respected forensic pathologist, and he's a former New York City chief medical examiner. He has publicly gone on record that the evidence in his professional opinion points to homicide. While the official ruling remains, even to this day, a suicide, Dr. Baden's expert opinion does cast this long, dark shadow of doubt over the whole thing. And if that's not enough, Epstein's former cellmate, a massive ex-cop charged with 4 murders, well, he was inexplicably removed from the cell without any explanation just hours before Epstein died. And that left Epstein entirely alone, which was, as we have already gone over, a clear violation of the standard procedure and standard protocol for a high-profile inmate with alleged suicidal ideations. Even Attorney General William Barr, who's no stranger to protecting political interest, said there were, and I quote, serious irregularities in the case. And that's putting it lightly. So you got to ask yourself, if you were a high-level figure who had visited Epstein's island, flown on his plane, or appeared in one of his tapes, what would you do to keep him quiet? Was Epstein silenced to protect the global elites, or did he escape justice by staging his own death with help from powerful friends? Either way, he's dead. So let's now step into territory that many are afraid to even whisper about. The idea that Epstein was part of something far larger than just his circle of friends. A global network of human trafficking and child exploitation, protected and empowered by the elites who benefit from its existence. This theory is often dismissed by the mainstream media as something on the fringe, fantastical, or a product of internet paranoia. But we still have to ask, how fringe is it really when the names involved are presidents, royalty, billionaires, and celebrities? The concept of a cabal, a clandestine group of powerful individuals engaging in coordinated, morally reprehensible acts. This has existed in conspiracy circles for decades. But Epstein's operation gave that concept, well, it put flesh and bone to it. It gave us something that we could actually sink our teeth into, right? Young girls were trafficked across borders. Blackmail setups were found in exotic mansions, international banking connections, political protection, all that stuff. Many point to the layout and decor on Epstein's Little St. James Island. The strange blue and white temple with no apparent religious purpose, which just fascinates the hell out of me. So a lot of people speculate that it was deliberately designed to obscure its true function, or perhaps for some darker symbolic purpose. The use of owls, which is a symbol that's often associated with secret societies like the Bohemian Club or with wisdom and hidden knowledge, further fueled these theories. Survivors reported bizarre rituals, role-playing, and power dynamics that border on the occult, far beyond simple sexual exploitation. Were these just mere aesthetic choices, or was there something more happening there? A deliberate psychological manipulation designed to break down victims and further bind participants to these shared dark secrets. This also ties in with allegations in unrelated cases. The Franklin cover-up in Nebraska in the 1980s involving foster children allegedly flown to Washington, D.C. for sex parties with politicians. That's a case that was largely dismissed despite persistent claims and unanswered questions. Or the Nexium cult, most recently. Those cult leaders were convicted for sex trafficking and branding women with direct ties to Hollywood and billionaires, showcasing another instance of elite individuals exploiting vulnerable people under the guise of self-help or secret societies. Are these just isolated cases, or pieces of a systemic pattern suggesting a recurring modus operandi among certain powerful circles? And then there's the unsettling consistency in the survivor testimonies themselves. From Palm Beach to Paris to New Mexico to the Virgin Islands, the methods are strikingly similar. Girls as young as 12 brought in under false pretenses, trafficked between locations, abused, and silenced. The pattern it's just too clear to ignore. So the question becomes, if Epstein was the central hub, who were the clients? And did they operate with impunity because of, shared guilt or shared interest or shared protection? If a global network exists and Epstein was just one tentacle of that octopus, then exposing him threatens the entire system. And that's why the files are so dangerous. That's why the truth may never be allowed to surface. Now, let's get into the political powder keg here, because regardless of party affiliation, the Epstein scandal has touched nearly every corner of the U.S. political machine, and neither Donald Trump nor Joe Biden is free from implication. So let's start with Trump. Donald Trump had a long and well-documented relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. There's plenty of photos of them together smiling at parties. Epstein was a guest at Mar-a-Lago, which is Trump's exclusive club in Florida. And Trump famously said in 2002, quote, he's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. However, it's worth noting that Epstein was reportedly banned from Mar-a-Lago in 2004, years before his first arrest, indicating a possible distancing between him and Trump even then. And yet, once Epstein was arrested, Trump vehemently distanced himself. He said he wasn't a fan and hadn't spoke to him in years. But flight logs show multiple trips by Epstein's jet to areas where Trump owned property. Even if Trump himself denies being there, Epstein was. Virginia Jeffrey named Trump in a lawsuit as someone who saw her at Epstein's parties and Epstein's properties. Another lawsuit, which was eventually dropped, accused Trump of rape at one of Epstein's parties. So why were these accusations so quickly buried or just dismissed with less scrutiny than others? And why, as recently as July of 2025, did reports surface that Attorney General Pam Bondi informed President Trump that his name appeared all over the Epstein Files? And then there's Joe Biden. As Vice President and President, Biden not one time addressed the Epstein scandal directly. His Justice Department didn't prioritize the unsealing of the files, and his administration, well, it remained largely silent on any robust investigation into Epstein's wider network. Critics point to this silence as a stark contrast to the administration's stated commitment, or to his administration's, should I say, stated commitment to fighting human trafficking. Are they avoiding it because they're clean, or because the rot runs through both parties and no one wants to open the proverbial Pandora's box? There are rumors, unconfirmed but persistent, that names in the redacted Epstein files include sitting members of Congress, high-ranking cabinet members, and even foreign diplomats with whom our government continues to do business with. And let's not forget the U.S. Virgin Islands' recent lawsuit against J.P. Morgan Chase. This lawsuit, well, it wasn't just about money. It was about institutional complicity. The lawsuit included damning allegations that the bank ignored Epstein's human trafficking operation for years simply because of his financial power, highlighting a systemic failure of oversight. Depositions from that case have named high-profile people in government and finance, suggesting that Epstein had undue influence over regulatory bodies and was able to operate with shocking impunity. J.P. Morgan Chase, as we know, eventually settled for $75 million, as I just stated a little while ago in this podcast, and Deutsche Bank settled for another $75 million more, and that was both to the U.S. Virgin Islands and victims respectively. But the full extent of their complicity and the names involved still remain heavily guarded. Why? Why is that? Is it possible that both Trump and Biden, despite their deep personal and ideological rivalry, share a mutual interest in suppressing the Epstein files? the Justice Department's recent memo, July 2025, stating that they found no client list or evidence of blackmail and would not release more files, excuse me, it directly contradicts previous statements from officials and further fuels public speculation and suspicion and keeps the fires burning about this conspiracy theory. If the sitting president and the former president and members of both parties are compromised, then who can hold them accountable? Who is left to speak for the people? It'd just be the people themselves, right? And thanks to Trump's own doings, a sitting president cannot be charged with a crime. So if the files are released somehow, and Trump's name is on them, all over them, and even if we have videos of all of this, and we see Trump banging a 12-year-old, legally, nothing can be done because he's a sitting U.S. president. And this is something that he did himself. He was responsible for instigating this. So now he didn't write an executive order. This is a Supreme Court thing. But once again, we all know that Trump is controlling the United States government, all three branches right now, right? So he can't, as long as he's president, he cannot be charged with a crime. But yet it's the conservative party that is screaming to have all this evidence released, right? So if Trump is implicated in these files, or if some sort of video shows up, or some sort of irrefutable proof that shows Trump was involved in this, can we depend on the conservative party to not support him anymore and go about the process of impeaching this depraved individual? I don't think we can depend on that. I just don't think the party is willing to do that yet. I could be wrong. And I hope I am, if, and this is if, he had anything to do with all this. But the fact that he is so vehemently denying that there are any files, and he's doing anything and everything he can to distract people from the Jeffrey Epstein files. Now he's saying, oh, well, I got Coke to change their formula. And now, I'm flying to overseas to talk about the 90-day moratorium on the tariffs, and now I'm doing this other stupid thing. And he's throwing stuff out there, and he's publicly saying, even on his Truth Social, which is amazingly stupid that he would name it Truth Social, but he's all his famous all capital yelling on Truth Social, stop talking about the Epstein files. So he is upset. He knew that his name appeared in there because Pam Bondi told him. Plus, there was a memo that he sent to the FBI that said, if when you're looking through this, flag anything that has my name on it. So we know that his name's in there. We don't know what they say. It could be, Trump gave him a birthday present, which the birthday present that Trump did give to him was kind of lewd and inappropriate, but, doesn't prove that he did anything. It just proves that he's a bumbling idiot and not a good person, not a nice guy. But we don't know exactly what's in the files. But the fact that Trump and the DOJ, Pam Bondi, that they are doing everything they can to not release the files and to distract us from what's really going on, it all screams cover up. So I'm going to get off of that soapbox, and let's pull back for a minute. After everything that we've talked about tonight and everything that we've uncovered, you might still be asking yourself, why does this matter now? Epstein's dead. Ghislaine Maxwell's in prison. Why can't we just move on? Well, we can't. We can't move on. Because if the Epstein operation was truly what many people believe it was, which was a global blackmail ring involving some of the most powerful people on earth, and I happen to be one of those people, then its exposure is not just about justice for the victims. It's about reclaiming the integrity of our institutions, of our very democracy. Every sealed name represents a potential criminal walking free, possibly holding positions of power and influence even today. Every redacted detail is a stain on the idea that justice is blind, that no one is above the law. And every day that passes without transparency is another day that survivors are denied closure and the public is deliberately kept in the dark, wondering who among their leaders is compromised. This matters because it speaks to who truly runs the world, a hidden architecture of power and privilege that operates above the law. If we accept that billionaires and presidents can traffic in human lives and then walk away without any consequence whatsoever, we accept tyranny. We surrender the foundational principles of justice and equality that our societies are supposed to be built upon. We've seen what happens when power protects itself. Evidence disappears. Key witnesses die under suspicious circumstances. Media outlets are pressured to look the other way, and the public narrative is steered towards distraction and denial. We are gaslit into forgetting, into believing it's all just conspiracy theory when the evidence mounts. But silence, ladies and gentlemen, silence, dear listener, is complacency. And forgetting is surrender. So tonight, we've peeled back the layers of one of the most unsettling conspiracies of our time. We've looked into the life, the crimes, and the shadowy legacy of Jeffrey Epstein. And more importantly, we've examined the system that enabled him. So ask yourself, if these files truly contain names, videos, and evidence of crimes committed by the powerful, why haven't we seen them? Is it to protect innocent reputations or to shield guilty empires, ensuring that a dark network remains intact and unexposed? Who truly benefits from this continued secrecy? If there's one thing we've learned from the Epstein case, it's that evil doesn't operate in the shadows. It thrives in plain sight, cloaked in privilege and protected by silence. As always, I don't claim to have every answer here, but I do believe in asking the hard questions, and I believe in the power of awareness, because the more we expose, the less they can hide. And to those who say this is just another conspiracy theory, I say this: fine. Prove me wrong. Release the files. Show the world what you have kept locked away. Let the full truth emerge, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And until then, people like me, well, we'll keep on asking. We will keep on digging, and we will not forget. This has been Parareality. I'm Sandman. Stay curious, because the truth is rarely what it seems. Keep listening after this break to learn how you can get even more of the Parareality podcast and about my next episode. If you'd like to leave a comment about tonight's episode of Parareality, have an idea for a topic you'd like me to cover, or a story you'd like to tell, send me an email, sandman@parareality.com, or call the Secret Bunker at 615-692-1170 and leave me a message. Don't forget that by leaving me your message, you're giving me permission to play your comment back on the podcast. Also, don't forget to follow Parareality on social media. You can find the podcast on Facebook by looking for sandman.parareality, or you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram under the username @ParaRealRadio. You can also find Parareality on YouTube under the username Parareality1. That's Parareality with the number 1 out behind it. Parareality.com is the home of the podcast on the web, and it's also where you can find paranormal news from all around the world in the Paranews section. And you can listen to past episodes in the archive section, all for the price of absolutely nothing. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can buy yourself some swag in the official Parareality shop while you're there. You can also support the podcast for free by leaving me a 3-star or better review on whatever podcast app you're listening on. Your reviews help the podcast to grow and reach even more people, and I would appreciate it very much. I'd love to hear from you guys, so send me those emails. Thank you. So I still have to go back and make some corrections to that little social media commercial because the phone number has changed. Remember, I was using Skype for years as my phone provider, and Skype is no longer in service, so I've had to grab a new phone number, and that number is 615-492-4364. So the new number to the secret bunker is 615-492-4364. I promise, redo that commercial and put in the new telephone number. So once again, if you want to call, and the secret bunker line is 24/7, 365. There's like a 3-minute or 4-minute, something like that, time limit on it. So if you want to call and leave me a message and you get cut off, call back and just pick right back up where you started off, where you left off. You can be, hey, I like your show. Hey, I think your show sucks. Ideas for a topic. You've got a story you want to tell about something, call it up, leave me a message. I'll get back in touch with you if you want me to. So that number again, 615-492-4364. Now, everyone, I am so pleased to say that I have relaunched my official Patreon page. And for as little as $1 a month, you can get the commercial-free episode of this podcast and other bonus content. And for just a couple of bucks more, you'll also have access to my companion podcasts, Midnight Syndicate and Beyond Reality, plus the opportunity to appear as a guest on the podcast. Now, subscribing to my Patreon not only helps support Parareality, but also helps me continue to bring you quality content like this on a regular basis. Now, I'm like most podcasters. I don't make any money at this. I spend money. It cost me a lot of money to do this. And anything and everything that I make off of merchandise, appearances, which, yeah, right, or my Patreon, that goes right back into the podcast. I don't pocket not one single penny of any of this. It all goes back in helping me keep bringing you this podcast. So please, if you can find it in your heart to join my Patreon, it mean a lot to me. It would go so far into helping me keep bringing you quality content here. And if you're not a joiner, I get it. I totally understand. I'm not one of a joiner either. But the good news is that Patreon gives you a week trial for free. So if you want to just try it out for a week, go ahead. And there's tons of content on there of these extra podcasts that I do and post up on my Patreon page. So kind of, I only do this every the first and third Fridays of the month. That's the only time that I produce new content. But on the second and fourth Fridays of the month, you have these other podcasts that I do that I post up there. Midnight Syndicate, great podcast, I think. It's not just me talking. It's a group of people talking about the latest pop culture conspiracy theories. And the Beyond Reality podcast is a couple of guest podcasters that I've got that they'll take one topic that I talk about every month, and they'll do a little bit deeper dive into it. So anyway, if you want to get some free content, join for a week, download and listen to all that stuff as much as you can. Or if you're like, nope, not going to do it, just a simple free way that you can help grow the podcast is to give me a rate and review, whatever podcast app you're listening on, especially the big three, Apple, Spotify, and Amazon. If you're especially those three, a 3-star better review would be great. It helps the podcast grow, and it doesn't cost you a single red cent to do. And my job, I want to put this podcast in as many ears as I possibly can. So just giving me a 3-star or better review helps the podcast grow, and I would really, really appreciate it. That's enough for me rambling. I feel like I'm begging, and I don't want to do that either. So I hope that you enjoyed tonight's episode of Parareality. My next episode is going to drop on Friday, August the 15th, 2025 at 8 o'clock p.m. Central U.S. time. I'll be winding down my annual summer series on that episode, and this year's series has been all about Bigfoot, and I'm closing it down with an interview with Bigfoot researcher and investigator Jerry Millwood. Fascinating interview. Man, he tells some great stories, so make sure you tune in, and find out on Friday, August the 15th, 2025, 8 o'clock p.m. Central U.S. time. Everyone, I hope this podcast opens up your minds to new ways of thinking, expands your consciousness, and produces a change in the way you see the world. If you wish to change, you must lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe. Hope you have a great evening, a great weekend, and I will see you again on August the 15th. Good night, everybody.
If you wish to change, you must first lift the veil of ignorance that has been cast over your eyes. Only then will you see the true power of the universe.
Hey, it's not over. Thanks for sticking around. I got something to tell you. Do you want to be a member of the Secret Sanctum? Well, if you do, there's only one way to do that. Somewhere on parareality.com is a link hidden in my website. And if you can find that link and click on it, you'll be granted access to the secret bunker, and you'll become a member of the Secret Sanctum. It's 100% free. It's not going to cost you anything. And once you become a member, you'll have access to some secret audio files and secret documents, some of which are exclusive only to Parareality and the members of the Secret Sanctum. You'll also get a free Parareality Secret Sanctum t-shirt. Just fill out the form and let me know what size you are, where you're located in your name, and I'll get that right out to you. So if you want to be a member of the Parareality Secret Sanctum and have access to the secret bunker, find the link.